Is Obamacare repealed dead?
I don't think it's dead. In the
It
sense.
doesn't have to be dead if you're going to have Democrats working with you. To,
Why? No,
to address
I don't know that that's true because I think
Care
it's,
Act. Why would
well,
they? Why would they work
because
with you?
it's dying.
You're still trying to repeal it.
Because I think part of it is there's a recognition that it is failing. It's dying on its own. It will be dead soon.
Democrats say it's not dying.
Okay, well then a lot of Democrats need to get
there
more
are
money.
repairs that
because
need to be made. They say, but
I
to
understand
kill the
that,
whole
but
thing might
I
not
understand
be
what they want,
the route they
but
want to go.
I think there's a difference. I think that we recognize that premiums continue to go sky high, deductibles are going sky high, choices are going down. By Leader Pelosi's own metric, this is dying. She's the one who crafted the metric. She said that there was a three-pronged system determining its success. It is an abysmal failure. If they want to come back to the table and recognize how we can do it in a more responsible way to achieve the goals that Obamacare set out to do, but do so in a way that's going to do the opposite of what Obamacare actually did, which is to increase choice, drive down cost, we're willing to have that discussion. But right now, and I again,
they
remember,
say repeal has to be
right,
put to the side.
but Jim, one of the things that I mentioned, I just want to be clear on this, is we have to figure out how we get to 216, 218, depending on where the number is that given day. That doesn't mean we need the entire Democratic caucus. That means we need some responsible Democrats who want to sit down and have a discussion about how to do that. And I think that there may be enough of them that are willing to do that. But I understand where the Democratic leadership is, and that's one thing. I mean, they continue to stake out a very, very far left position. That's not where all their members are. And I think that we can, based on the calls that have come in over the last 50, 60 hours, I think that there might be some room to have a conversation with people who want to engage in a constructive conversation on how to move forward. And so let's see how that evolves. I don't know that we're ready to jump into this today, but I think as the calls come forward, the president's view is if you all want to get together and start coming to a way that we can come to resolution, we're willing to listen. But right now, we've got an agenda to continue to pursue.
There might be a middle ground there, you think?
I'm not going to jump ahead, but I will say that we believe that there is something that could still be done at some point. And I think the further along we go, where premiums continue to go up, more and more people will be drawn into this discussion because there's going to be a continued cry from people in terms of the impact that it's having on their pocketbook and on their ability to see people that a doctor of their choice or a plan that's just not seating them anymore. April.
Real quick follow-up on Chairman Nunes. Do you reject that there's any kind of perception problem whatsoever in having the chairman over here the day before he comes out publicly and says, by the way, there's this information that's helpful to the president?
I think the chairman's made very clear through his public comments what his goal was, and I think anyone who wants to, I mean, you can't ask someone to do a review of the situation and then sort of create inferences that because they're reviewing a situation that there's something that's not right about that. He is reviewing the situation. He did exactly what, and I think he's been fairly open with the press as far as what he was doing, who he spoke to, and why. And I think from our standpoint, that's what we had asked to do as a review.
Sean, thank you. Given that the Freedom Caucus blocked the bill to repeal the Obamacare, does the president still believe he can work with the Freedom Caucus on future pieces of legislation?
I think it's going to depend on what legislation.
So not necessarily.
Well, I'm not going to. It's not a question of we're going to work with anybody who wants to work with us on achieving the goals that the president set out. I don't think we're not putting anyone and saying we'll never work with you again. It is that balance. No, I don't think he's written. No, I think as he mentioned, he learned a lot through this process about loyalty. And it's not just a block, it's certain individuals. And again, I'm not going to get into naming names, but I think the president learned a lot through this process. And one of the things that's interesting is when you look back, and I know there's been a lot to make of this, the president also recognizes that when there's not a deal to be made, when to walk away. That's one of the traits. It's not just about making deals, it's knowing when to walk away from deals and knowing when there's a bad deal that's the only solution. I think the president understood that while you can get a deal at the time, that sometimes a bad deal is worse than getting a deal. And I think he smartly recognized that what was on the table was not going to be keeping with the vision that he had. And so he decided that this was not the time and that a deal was not at hand.
Let me ask you about this tweet over the weekend. Does he regret tweeting to his followers that they should tune in to Judge Janine only to tune in and then have her call for, have
He's
Speaker
a
Paul
fan of
Ryan
the show.
step down?
That's it, plain and simple.
But does he owe Speaker Ryan an apology then?
He and Speaker Ryan talked extensively over the weekend. I mean,
Did they
he's
talk
a.
today?
I don't know if they talked today. I think they talked both Saturday and Sunday at length. But again, he's a fan of the show. He tweeted out support of it. That's it, plain and simple.
A lot of people
I know
say
what a
it's
lot of
more
people
than
say,
a
Kristen. I just
coincidence,
said
so
it.
does he owe the
No,
House Speaker an apology?
he doesn't. He's spoken for what? For supporting a show on Fox? No.
And does he
Dave.
still have confidence
Dave.
they can work together,
Dave.
Sean?
Dave.
Two questions. Follow up a little bit on Chairman Nunes, and I have a question about Jared in a second. So, yes, members of Congress may not need to be cleared in, but to get access to a SCIF, I do believe that requires some cooperation from the executive branch, because there are intelligence places on Capitol Hill that are secure that this meeting could have taken place. So it creates the impression that Chairman Nunes came over here and with some degree of cooperation with this White House was able to carry out this meeting and then make the announcement that he did, which is perceived by some, most of them Democrats, I'll grant you that it was trying to be helpful to this president and this administration. So it appears there was some degree of cooperation in this process that the White House granted Chairman Nunes, making it not just an investigative action, but a cooperative one.
Right. So I would refer you to two things. Number one, we've asked both of these entities, both the House and the Senate Intelligence Committees, to undertake this review. So it is partially at our request that they're looking into this. Number two, based on the public comments that he made to Margaret's organization, he has said, from my understanding on the record, that he did not meet with White House staff. So again, I think you're trying to make something that he has himself, from what I've read, not actually been the case.
That's not what I asked you. I asked you about cooperation to have access to a
I
SCIF,
understand
which
that.
is something
I'm not-
that has to be carried out with your agreement.
I will be glad to take a look at that and figure out whether or not that is an accurate statement or not.
Okay, let me ask you about Jared. There is an understanding that's trying to be worked out, as we understand it, between Jared and the Senate Intelligence Committee. Is that testimony? Is that something that the committee has requested? Is he volunteered?
Yeah.
And does he believe he has something to explain to that committee and more broadly the American public about what he did on behalf of the transition, with whom he met with, and some of the meetings that he took that are raising questions about Russia and folks that he met with that are outside of diplomatic channels but have other aspects to their Russian business deals that may cause concern?
So throughout the campaign and the transition, Jared served as the official primary point of contact with foreign governments and officials until we had State Department officials up
And that was
once
the
we assumed.
President-elect's request.
That's correct. And so given this role, he volunteered to speak with Chairman Burr's committee, but has not received any confirmation regarding a time for a meeting or anything.
Is this going to be a private meeting, or is this going to be a
I don't
public?
know. He again,
And
he
what
was
is
at.
he trying to accomplish with that?
I think based on the questions that surround this, he volunteered to go in and sit down with them and say, hey, I'm glad to talk about the role that I played and the individuals I met with. But again, remember, given the role that he played both during the campaign and during the transition, he met with countless individuals. That was part of his job. That was part of his role. And he executed it completely as he was supposed to.
And so he doesn't believe he owes the American public an explanation
For
about
what?
this.
Doing his job?
I'm just
Meeting
asking.
with? But you're acting as though there's something nefarious about doing what he was actually tasked to
Well,
do.
it's not every day that someone in a senior position like Jared's volunteers to go talk to the Senate Intelligence Committee about an investigation
because of the-
dealing with meddling by a foreign power
Right,
in the
and I
American
think based on
election.
the media frenzy around this, and I'm answering it. And I'm just saying to you that based on the media frenzy that existed around this, he volunteered to make sure that he said, hey, we've made some contacts. I'd be glad to explain them. Let me know if you'd like to talk. Plain and simple.
The White House know what happened now beyond public accounts, and are you satisfied that you don't have an inappropriate leak in the executive branch?
No, I'm not. We're not concerned about that. I know that he is, again, everything that I know about what he has done is through public reports that he has made on the record to different folks. When he said he has multiple sources, he had met with different folks to gather things as part of his review of the situation. And so all I know and what I'm willing to communicate is what has been made available through on-the-record comments that he has made.
You have to be cleared onto the
No,
White
not
House.
necessarily. I don't know that members of Congress need to be cleared.
But wouldn't the White House want to know?
Again, I think there's a
President
difference.
Trump
He's doing a review, and it's not something that we're going to necessarily get in the middle of or get in the way of. It's part of it is to let him review and have conversations and look at things that he thinks are relevant.
Sean,
Howard.
a clarification on your answer to Margaret. You just said, I don't know that members of Congress have to get cleared in. There is some question about that. Who in the White House signed him in, essentially, to be able to get
I don't
on
know
the
that you
grounds?
have. I'll be glad to check on that. I'm not sure that that's how that works, but I will follow up on that point.
So the second question is, and it's related to this, I understand that you're not going to speak about some of the swirl, what's surrounding this issue with Chairman Nunes. But does the White House believe that he can still lead an impartial investigation, or would the administration support some of these calls now for an independent committee to investigate this?
First of all, I would question what this is, because as I've mentioned countless times from this podium, there's two issues at hand. There's multiple. There's, number one, there's any action with respect to Russia itself, and every single person that's been briefed by Director Comey in particular and the FBI has said there's nothing there. What he is looking into are two things that we are aware of because of the pleas that we have made. One is the leaks of classified and other information that have come out, and two is whether or not there has been people that have been unmasked and whether or not there's surveillance occurred. I don't know why we stand by the original request that was made, and I think Director Comey in open testimony the other day talked about what the FBI is looking into. So I think we, have a lot of people looking into this whole situation.
Sean, will the administration will the White House pursue a leak investigation into whoever is giving Chairman Nunes this information, if it's in the executive branch?
I at this point, we're letting the review of this situation proceed, and we can address that after he decides to be clear about that.
Why is this leak okay, but other leaks are not?
It's not. I think there's a difference between a leak and someone pursuing a review of a situation that they have determined. That's not. There's a difference between a leak, someone leaking out to reporters for nefarious, to take classified information and share it with people who aren't cleared. Chairman Nunes is cleared. He is the chairman of the Intelligence Committee. Someone who is cleared to share classified information with somebody else cleared is not a leak.